All right. Thank you for having me in today. This is great. I actually came in early because the Catholic Church started a prayer campaign for Amendment 3 and had Mass yesterday with the bishop, so I came in early to go to that Mass, and he did a spectacular job, so that was fun. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just here to educate you on, we're going to start with a very brief pro-life history of Missouri. Then we're going to talk about the history or what's in our Constitution now because of Amendment 3 2024 and what Amendment 3 2026 will do to fix a lot of the damage that was done in 2024. Okay, let me take a quick drink and we'll get started. All right, so Missouri has always been a pro-life state. We became a state in 1821. And in 1824, we passed our first pro-life legislation. Over the years, we've passed multiple laws that have continued to make it safer for women and harder for abortions to take place in the state of Missouri. In particular, between 2015 and 2017, there were some key legislative victories that ended up, there were 3 at the time, Planned Parenthood surgical abortion facilities open, Kansas City, Columbia, and St. Louis. And those laws were instrumental in closing down 2 of the 3, which was Kansas City and Columbia. The reason that Columbia, Missouri shut down was because an inspector went in and found dried baby fetal parts on rusty, moldy equipment. And they were shut down for that. But in 2019, Missouri passed the heartbeat bill. Now, the heartbeat bill said that once a baby's heartbeat is detected, which is typically 6 weeks, then no abortions could be performed after that. But that never actually went into effect because they sued to say it, and stopped it in the courts, and it never actually got into effect. But attached to that was the trigger law. And the trigger law said that if Roe versus Wade was ever struck down, we would have a full ban in the state of Missouri. And as you all know, in 2022, Roe versus Wade was struck down by Dobbs, and Eric Schmidt evoked our trigger law, which meant for the first time in Missouri, we had a full ban on abortion. But you need to know Missouri has never been a constitutionally pro-life state. We have never voted to have pro-life in our Constitution. We have been a pro-life state because of the legislature. The legislature has enacted over 50 laws in the past 60 years, making it more and more and more difficult for places like Planned Parenthood to even exist, because frankly, they do not care about health and safety standards for women. So in 2024, though, that all flipped. We went from the most pro-life state in the Union to the most pro-abortion, pro-death state, not only in the state of the United States, but in the world. That's how bad this legislation was. So on November 5th, 2024, when we passed Amendment 3, it became Article 1, Section 36 of our Constitution. So going forward, I'm going to try to only refer to the old one as Article 1, Section 36, and the new one this year as Amendment 3, so as to hopefully stop a lot of the confusion. But the day after this passed in 2024, Planned Parenthood sued the state of Missouri and tried to invalidate all the health and safety standards that have been passed over the past 60 years. On February 14th of 2025, Valentine's Day, it's crazy, they succeeded, and all of the health and safety standards in Missouri for reproductive health were blocked. Now, the very next day, Columbia, Missouri Planned Parenthood, who had been shut down for 7 years because of the horrific conditions, reopened their doors and performed the first surgical abortion in Missouri the very next day. And guess what? We have no idea if they cleaned it up. They never reopened in 7 years. So now we have at the largest university and the 3-college town in Columbia, probably still a facility that has rusty, moldy baby parts with college students being able to go there. And all the health and safety standards are gone. The other thing that's gone is their ability to sue, which you will see in a minute, which means they are at great risk in the Columbia, Missouri right now. 2 key bills or laws were also invalidated at that time. One of them was the 72-hour waiting period in order to get an abortion. And the other one was the ability that you had to get an ultrasound before you could get an abortion. We know that if women can see the baby in the womb and hear the heartbeat and have to wait 72 hours, 80% of those women will choose life. So let me talk about Article 1, Section 36. I'm going to tell you first what it blocked. Physician and facility health and safety standards have been blocked. Physician requirement to give informed consent has been blocked. The right to sue for malpractice, injury, or death has been blocked. Parents' consent for a child seeking an abortion or sex change surgeries or drugs has been blocked. So now a child in a school, your child, your grandchild, could be at school. They cannot get a Tylenol from a teacher, but a teacher can help facilitate them getting abortifacient drugs, chemical abortions, or puberty blockers without your knowledge or consent. That is in our Constitution right now. The ban on taxpayer funding for abortions has been blocked. And the ability for the legislator to make new laws regulating reproductive health and abortions. So now we have lost all of these they've been blocked, all of our old legislation, and now our legislators' hands are tied and they cannot make any new laws regarding reproductive health. They cannot. So, and let me tell you, it's not just legislature. We all know legislature, so that's what I put up there. It's also the government. So if right next to your churches, a Planned Parenthood wanted to go up and do late-term abortions right next to your church or next to your home in your subdivision, there is nothing that the city, the state, or the county can do to block them from coming in and going into those places. Let me tell you what it legalized. It legalized abortion for all 9 months for any reason, including children being able to get abortions without parents' knowledge and consent, and including mental health issues. So let's say an 8-month pregnant woman, her boyfriend breaks up with her, and now she decides, I can't deal with having a child. She can legally go and get a late-term abortion, and there's nothing we can do to stop that. Puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and sex change surgeries are now legal for children without parents' knowledge or consent. The biological males in girls' sports and in girls' locker rooms will now become legal. And it legalized the shielding of physicians and, and I'll talk about that in a minute. It's really medical professionals. It never uses the word physician in Article 1, Section 36. And facilities from being sued. And fetal organ harvesting for profit is now legal in the state of Missouri. And we know that the later the pregnancy is in the gestational age of the child, the more valuable those organs are to sell. So this is now in our Constitution. This is a huge moneymaker for Planned Parenthood, as are the chemical drugs, which you'll see in a minute. This is in the Missouri Constitution, Article 1, Section 36, on pages 18 and 19. There's an open book back there that has it all highlighted. You can go read it for yourself, but that's what's in our Constitution now. If you can also go onto the website, though, and you can look it up for yourself on the Secretary of State's website. Know that you have to go to Article 1. Article 1 is the Bill of Rights. This is in the Bill of Rights of our Constitution, the right to an abortion, the right for children to mutilate their bodies. This is in our constitutional rights in the state of Missouri. So, I typically ask people, but since I'm in a crowd full of pastors, I'm just going to assume you all know this. This is a spiritual battle. And we know that this language was inspired by Satan himself. Revelation 12:9 describes Satan as the great deceiver. We know in 2024 that people were deceived. They were told that miscarriage care and ectopic pregnancy care would not be covered anymore, and that women were going to be dying. That was a lie. That was a lie. Exodus 20:12 says, "Honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God has given you." We know that Article 1, Section 36 is trying to divide our families. It is taking our children away from their parents and having them make medical decisions without even consulting their parents. This is crazy. All right, and Jesus tells us in John 10:10 that Satan came to steal, kill, and destroy. We know that Satan right now is trying to steal our children, kill our unborn babies, and destroy our families. And this is why we need to consider the new Amendment 3 this year. So we're going to talk about what Amendment 3 restores, protects, and ensures. So we'll get started. We're going to start with restore, but I want you to see on the bottom of every slide going forward is actual language in Amendment 3 that you will be voting on in hopefully November, okay? So, parents' consent for a child seeking reproductive health care, including abortions, is restored. So they will have to get their parents' consent. Now, a child should never be encouraged or coerced into getting an abortion, and parents should be able to help children make these decisions in their life. This will reduce the sex trafficking of minors who are being forced to go get abortions by their trafficker. It will also help prevent boyfriends or perpetrators from coercing their girlfriend or their teenage girlfriend into getting an abortion without telling the parents. We must get consent for our children. This restores the limits on taxpayer-funded abortions. We'll talk in a minute about the exceptions. Those still would be covered, but they are very, very small, and I will talk about that in a second. But we as taxpayers should not have to be paying for our children to mutilate their bodies without even telling us, and for children to get abortions, and for all of this. We should not be paying for it. It will restore the ban on fetal organ harvesting. It will restore informed consent. So right now, Article 1, Section 36, if you have chemical abortions, you do not need to have a physician's prescription, confirming the gestational age of the child, which means could be deadly to the woman, because if it goes too far, she can have a ruptured ectopic pregnancy and she can bleed out, and explanation of the side effects. So I am looking for my little thing here. I don't know where it went. Do you guys see my little baby? All right, well, we'll go on. I'm going to tell a true story right now. And this, I want you to see how parents' consent and informed consent work together. So a teenage girl got pregnant. She didn't want to tell her parents, so she was able to get abortifacient drugs in the mail. She hid it from her parents, waited for them to go out of town for the weekend, and she proceeded to think, okay, I'm just going to do this. I'm going to take the abortifacient drugs. She was not given any informed consent or the risks of it. So now she thinks, what does everybody think? They think it's a clump of cells and that this is just like taking a Tylenol. So she takes her little pills, thinking she's taking like a Tylenol. And now all of a sudden she's cramping, she's bleeding, she's in a lot of pain. She doesn't understand what's happening to her. And now she delivers a little tiny baby, which I had one sitting here, sorry. But she delivers this little tiny baby. So she doesn't know what to do. So she calls the Pregnancy Resource Center. She's freaking out. She doesn't know what's happening to her. And she sets the baby on the counter. She calls the Resource Center, and while she's talking to the Resource Center, the cat jumps up on the counter and proceeds to go after the baby. So now she's freaking out. The Resource Center person's freaking out. They get the cat off the table. And typically, they would tell her to bury the baby in the backyard. But it's winter, and the ground is hard, and she cannot do that. So they tell her to put the baby in a plastic bag and put the baby in the freezer. So now imagine you're the parents coming home. You have just found out that your child went through an enormously traumatic event without your knowledge of what was happening, and your dead grandbaby is in the freezer. This is what can happen now in the state of Missouri. And let me tell you one more thing I found out recently. The person who took the call in that case, it took her 2 weeks to get over the trauma of that call to even take another call. And this is her profession. This is how traumatic this was. The legislators' ability to enact laws will be restored. So not only will we unblock all of the past ones, which have gotten us to a near ban and an actual ban before, can now be unleashed, and the legislature can make new laws, making it even harder to obtain things like chemical abortions. So let's talk about what it protects. Amendment 3 reinstates the health and safety standards, which I talked about, which will protect women, and it makes facilities and providers have to go back to the standards that we had, licensing standards we had before. That will protect women. It restores the woman's right to sue for health, if she's harmed in any reproductive health care procedure, okay? And gentlemen, since there's so many of you in the room, this is reproductive health care. This is Article 1, Section 36 says person. It does, which means adult or child, man or woman. If you have a prostate problem, if you decide to get a vasectomy and something goes wrong, you too will not, in Article 1, Section 36, you too would not be able to sue for something going wrong. We need our men to step up right now and protect our women and our children. Children will be protected because all sex change surgeries, puberty blockers, and cross-sex hormones will be banned. There will be no parent consent for this. It is just banned for all children under the age of 18. And what does it ensure? It ensures medical care for women, including ectopic pregnancies and miscarriages. We know we had that in the previous laws, but this will elevate it to the constitutional level, so there is no question in a doctor's mind if they can treat a woman with ectopic pregnancy or miscarriage care. It requires physicians provide medically accurate information. Now notice the word physician. Article 1, Section 36 never uses the word physician. It says medical professional, whatever that means. Unlicensed, untrained person can be doing anything reproductive in any unlicensed facility. This is like crazy. So I talked to a OBGYN, I interviewed one, and a pediatrician. And the OBGYN told me he's done over 1,000 DNCs for miscarriage care. He said he still, to this day, is he takes a healthy respect for what he's about to do, and realizes the danger he can cause a woman. If it's after 8 weeks, he has a second physician come in and do an ultrasound while he's doing it so that he doesn't make any mistakes and cause any harm to the woman. He told me he cannot even fathom the fact that an unlicensed, untrained person could do this to a woman and the dangers that it would be for the woman. Now, it does allow for, it bans abortions except in cases of rape and incest up to 12 weeks, fetal anomalies, fatal fetal anomalies, and medical emergencies for the woman. Now, I'm sure every person in this room, just like me, isn't thrilled about these exceptions. But what you need to understand about Amendment 3 is the definitions in it, because this amendment is amazingly written to make this as narrow as possible and get us to a point where we can, in the future, get a ban. So let me talk about that. Medical emergency only applies to the physical condition that would cause serious risk of the woman's life or major bodily function. Article 1, Section 36 says mental health. That's what gets you all the way up to 9 months. This is the physical only of the danger of life for the woman. Now, again, talking to the OBGYN, what would you consider a life-threatening for the woman? He said there are 2 conditions. One of them is placenta previa, where the baby's placenta is in the way of being able to deliver. So typically, they sew up the woman, sorry if it's too graphic for you men, and then they make sure she's not doing too much and doesn't start bleeding, and they get her beyond 23 weeks, and she can deliver safely deliver a baby. The other one is preeclampsia. Now, my daughter had preeclampsia. Preeclampsia is a very dangerous condition where you have very high blood pressure, your legs swell up like elephant trunks, and so it is very dangerous. But again, you can put a woman on bed rest, you can get her well past 23 weeks, and she can deliver a healthy baby. So I asked him, and I did some research. Most preeclampsia and placenta previa happens in weeks 32 to 36, which means these babies are not in jeopardy and the mom can be saved and the baby's born. So I asked my OBGYN friend, how many times have you had to extract a baby because of placenta previa or preeclampsia? Never in 38 years of practice has he had to do that. So he does not see a single instance where a medical emergency would cause an abortion in a woman. And I do have that on Freedom Principles website. You can go and listen to our interview with him if you would like. We also interviewed a lawyer, a pastor, and a pediatrician, 4 separate interviews. So it prohibits abortions based on a prenatal diagnosis, test, or screening indicating a disability. Think about that. You cannot use a prenatal diagnosis, test, or screening to indicate a disability in a child. So the pediatrician was like, well, then you can't diagnose a disability, right? So what happens? What we hear often too, I think we all have heard this, a woman gets pregnant, the doctor says she has a disability, the baby has a disability, she decides she was going to choose life, she goes ahead and she has the baby, and the baby's perfectly fine. We've all heard that. These babies are protected under this portion of Amendment 3. So now, but it does say, except in cases of medical emergencies or fetal anomalies. Okay, so we have a group of people who are saying that we're going to take all of our disabilities and we're going to lump them into the fetal anomaly bucket, and we're still going to abort them all. Okay? Well, let me tell you, I write this very big, so hopefully you can read it. The definition of fetal anomaly in Amendment 3 is a structural or functional abnormality in the unborn child's gestational development that would make life outside the womb impossible. Impossible. Let me tell you what the 5 most common fetal anomalies are. Down syndrome, spina bifida, heart condition, club foot, and cleft palate. Are any of those impossible to live outside the womb? They all live outside the womb. We know that. So those babies are now protected under Amendment 3. Can anybody think of a single fetal anomaly that they believe would qualify in this definition? Anybody? Let me tell you, the most common that I've heard for a while is trisomy 13 and trisomy 18 babies. So when you think of trisomy, think trisomy 21 is Down syndrome. Trisomy 13 and trisomy 18 are a more severe genetic disorder, okay? Typically, these babies end up in miscarriage. They end up in a miscarriage. They don't usually even make it to delivery. But in the past, when a woman chose to keep the baby and to deliver the baby, in the past, physicians did nothing to help the baby survive. They were considered lethal, and they typically would live hours, sometimes days, sometimes weeks at the most. There are some trisomy babies that are much older that we know of, but typically that's the way it was handled in the past. But just this past August, praise God, the American Academy of Pediatrics just put out guidance for caring for infants and children with trisomy 13 and trisomy 18. I have a friend who had a trisomy baby that died just 10 days, I think, old. And he said for 40 years they've been fighting to get care for trisomy 13 and 18 babies. He brought this to my attention right after it came out in August. This is no longer a death sentence. These quotes are right out of it. Previously considered lethal, steady increase in medical and surgical interventions, and no ethical justification for universal principle-based differential treatment based solely on these genetic conditions. That means these babies will be saved under Amendment 3. They will not qualify anymore as a lethal child to be aborted. Now, notice the word children. Even in the definition, it tells us they expect these babies to live. Trisomy, caring for infants and children. They assume that they are going to be able to get these babies to grow up, okay? So these babies will be protected under Amendment 3. If you want to see this, you can go to AAP, which is American Academy of Pediatrics/pediatrics, and you can just type in trisomy 13 or trisomy 18, and you can look up this guidance. Now, there are 2 conditions, according to the pediatrician and according to the OBGYN, that would qualify as a fatal fetal anomaly. The first one is anencephaly. That is when a baby is born with no brain. Now, there are levels of anencephaly. There are babies who are born with partial brains. There's actually a 20-year-old born with a partial brain, anencephaly, in Kansas City, and there's a 9-year-old that I read about. But if a baby is born without a brain, without any brain, and most certainly without a brain stem, that baby cannot live outside the womb. It cannot. The other symptom is Potter syndrome. Potter syndrome is when a baby's born with no kidneys. So me and my little, I don't know anything, I asked the OBGYN, well, can't you just dialyze the baby? Just like you would anybody who has kidney problems? There's nothing to dialyze. And you cannot live without your kidneys. So those are the only 2 conditions that he said would qualify for a fatal anomaly, okay? So I asked him, 38 years, how many times have you seen Potter syndrome or anencephaly in your practice? 0. 0 times in 38 years has he seen either one of these conditions. So I asked my daughter, was a nanny for an OBGYN who was in practice for 20 years. She saw 1 case of anencephaly in 20 years of practice. These exceptions are extraordinarily rare in Amendment 3. These are protecting the most vulnerable babies in the womb that are being aborted every day right now in Missouri. So let's talk about the reasons women get abortions. 0.4% are for rape and incest. 0.4. 0.3% are for the risk of the life of the mother. 1.2% are for fetal abnormalities. And 2.2% are for other physical conditions. And 95.9% of abortions are elective or unspecified, which I'm going to guess is sex trafficking. Okay? 95.9%. So, what does that mean? That means that Amendment 3 will legally remove 98% of the abortions, over 98% in the state of Missouri. Now, when I say legally, do we honestly believe that 98% of abortions are going to end in Missouri if we pass Amendment 3? No. Why? An abortion-minded woman can find a way to get an abortion right now. That's just the reality of where we're at. But there's 2 things we have to remember. 1, the law is a teacher. There are definitely women who will not get an abortion because it's illegal. So when you hear people say that Amendment 3 will not save a single baby, that is a lie. That is a lie. I think I've showed you plenty of ways that Amendment 3 will save a lot of babies. Okay? Now, the other thing is Amendment 3 restores the government's ability to make more laws. We need that to continue to make it harder for women to get abortions. We need that. This is probably the most important part of the whole amendment that nobody knows about, is that we need our legislator back. It was our legislators who got us the ban in the first place. It was our legislators. So we need them back. So let's talk about chemical abortions, because that is now almost 70% of abortions now are chemical. So the Ethics and Public Policy Center did a report on what happens when a woman gets chemical abortion drugs. They found that 1 out of 10 women end up with a serious adverse reaction within 45 days of taking chemical abortion pills. What does that mean? They end up in the emergency room. They could have sepsis, an infection. Let's see, what's the other ones? Hemorrhaging, or an incomplete abortion that requires a surgical abortion to finish it. This is what's happening. Chemical abortions are more dangerous than surgical abortions to the women. And we don't know about that because nobody's talking about it. Thank God for Josh Hawley, who's trying to get these banned, but we all know how difficult that will be in our Senate. So let's talk about what the legislators can do. In 2024, Louisiana passed a law that classified mifepristone as a controlled substance. That means that they have to get a physician's prescription in order to get it, and that we can track what happens to the woman, and that the woman then would have to be able to get an ultrasound to find out where she's at in the pregnancy. There won't be this willy-nilly drugs coming from everywhere, okay? We can pass that in Missouri if we untie the legislators' hands. In September of this last year, Texas passed a law that says that we can sue entities or individuals who manufacture, distribute, or assist even in getting chemical abortion drugs for women. They did this specifically to target the mail-in drugs that were coming in. So we can do things that will reduce the amount of abortions and especially chemical abortions, if we unleash our legislators to do their job, which will be the first thing we do and we lobby for, as well as what you'll see in a minute. All right, so what about those last 1.5% to 2% that we were talking about? My favorite part of Amendment 3 is the severability clause. The severability clause means, so this is what will happen if Amendment 3 passes. Article 1, Section 36 will be pulled out of our Constitution, and it will be replaced with the new Amendment 3, and it will become Article 1, Section 36 of the Constitution. So everything that we've just said will now become part of our Constitution. But it will also have attached to it a severability clause. The severability clause says that if ever in the future we can get a personhood or an equal protection law through the legislature, through either Missouri or in the United States, and we can get a ban either in Missouri or in the United States, we can carve out those few exceptions that are left. This is the strategy to get us to a ban on abortions in Missouri, and this is a very good strategy. Now let me give you some numbers, because this is the SLU, which is St. Louis University, YouGov poll just came out. 78% of Missourians want rape and incest clause on any ban. We cannot pass personhood right now. We are 28 points underwater on that. There is no way we could pass it. And there is no strategy to pass it. Okay? So we need to understand this is the way, because we have hearts and minds that must be changed. We have to, from the pulpits, get up and talk about the fact that abortion is a sin and that we need to make it unthinkable for women. Once we can make it unthinkable, then we can get the rest of these few exceptions out of our Constitution. All right. Please know, for 50 years, women believed they had a right to kill their children in the womb. When Dobbs happened, that did not go away. Women didn't say, oh my goodness, I was so wrong. That's not what happened. So we are not there yet, even though the law says that it goes back to the states. Okay? So, and personally, I don't want my children to think they have the right to mutilate their bodies, or my grandchildren, and to go and get abortions without even discussing it with their parents. This is a mindset we do not want embedded in our state. Just like for 50 years, we had this embedded in our US Constitution. I am fighting desperately to get this out for my children and grandchildren. So what's the goal? The goal is yes on 3. We know that 300,000 people in the state of Missouri that voted straight Republican, Trump, Kehoe, Wassinger, and all the way down, 300,000 of those people voted in favor of Amendment 3 in 2024. 300,000. We lost by 95,000 votes. So all we had to do was flip 45, 46, 47,000 votes. Now let me tell you the real heartbreaking part. 87% of, this is the exit polling, 87% of Protestants voted against Amendment 3 in 2024. 75% of Lutherans voted against Amendment 3, but only 52% of our Catholic brothers and sisters voted against Amendment 3. We need to get to the people in the pews right now and convince them that this is the right way to get this out of our Constitution and to move forward to work to make it unthinkable for abortions in this state. So, I am in St. Louis area. St. Louis and St. Charles makes up 45% of the total state vote. So I'm spending most of my time there going around trying to educate people so we can flip this back and be a pro-life state again. So we have Janine in the back here, who's in this area, who has learned this presentation and is more than willing to come to any of your churches, to your pro-life groups, and she's got a sign-up sheet back there. So please, please take this back to your churches and have it. So these are our talking points. We need to, because we know that abortion isn't really the issue that's going to win it for us, okay? What's going to win it for us is we're going to restore the health and safety standards for women. We need to restore parents' rights to make medical decisions for their children. And we need to remove the right for children to mutilate their bodies without parents' consent, as well as we have the right to an abortion in our Constitution. We have to get these rights out. The only way to do that is to purge Article 1, Section 36. No other bill that's even being considered right now is attacking Article 1, Section 36. This is the only one that will get this out of our Constitution. So, there are a lot of groups working together. I'm super excited that I'm going to have very soon an entire slide of just Christians that are behind this. So this is a little outdated, but the Missouri Baptist Convention came out. We know that the Assemblies of God is about to come out. Just yesterday, all the Catholic bishops had the Feast of the Annunciation masses where they talked about Amendment 3, and they are behind Amendment 3 now. Let me think of, there's some other ones out there. So we are gathering up all of the different religious groups in the area. I think the Lutherans are about to come on board as well, possibly the Lutheran Synod, I think. So anyway, my goal is to have an entire slide that is just Christians that are getting behind this, so we can know that people are talking about this from the pulpits and understanding this is not a political issue. This is a moral issue. This is a moral issue, and it must come out of our Constitution. So this is a volunteer form mostly for our area, but we do take requests on this also for presentations. So if I knew something was down here, then I could also pass it on to Janine. But we need people to gather and start in prayer groups. We need, let's just start with that first. There's 3 things we need right now. We need to be on our knees begging God's forgiveness for what we did 2 years ago. We turned our back, and not just turned our back, spit in his face when we passed this 2 years ago. And not all the pulpits talked about it. We need to repent, and we need to get on our knees and beg God's mercy on us and on our state, because this kind of death and destruction will ruin this state, and God's judgment will not last forever. So the second thing we need to do is educate. That's why I'm asking you to let Janine come and talk. We need people to understand this. 50% of Christians do not know what is in the old Amendment 3, and they don't know what's in the new Amendment 3. There's a lot of confusion, and we need to be very clear on this, okay? Let's see, and the third thing is voter registration. If you've never done a voter registration, it is not political. You can have a voter registration at your church. We have, if you get on there, I can make sure to email you some packets that you can use, but 50% of Christians are not registered to vote. 50% of Christians are not registered to vote. We just heard how important it is. This is our voice to be influence in our nation and in our state. Okay, so we need to do those. But let me talk real quick, 3 final things, and then I'll take some questions. First thing, God established 3 institutions: the family, the church, and the government. He never called the church to be the government or the government to be the church. We in the church are called to be the salt and light. That's our job. We know that salt is a preservative and an enhancer, and we know that light pushes back on the darkness. And we know that together they transform the environment that they are in. We need a transformation in the environment that we're in right now. 2, we cannot let perfect be the enemy of good. Romans 12:21 says, "Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good." Article 1, Section 36 of our Constitution is evil. It is a demonic attack on our families, and we must get it out. But our Amendment 3 is good. It's good. It has a strategy to get us where we want to be when we as the church step up and help people understand that abortion should be unthinkable. So we have the strategy. So we need for people to be positive when they talk about Amendment 3. I've heard people say this, well, it's all the legislator gave us, like they're Eeyore or something. Let me tell you, we're not going to pass Amendment 3 if we start acting like Eeyores out here saying this is all we got. This is a good strategy to get us to where we want to be in the future when we are ready to actually pass personhood or equal protection. And I'll tell you right now, the best legislative bill in the House right now is Darren Chappell's bill 2688, which is the equal protection, because it goes directly after the 14th and I can't remember the other one, in the US Constitution. If that bill ever passes in the future and can get through our Supreme Court and then to the US Supreme Court, which will probably be at least another decade from now, then we would have a ban on abortion in the entire United States, which is the only way we're actually going to have a ban in Missouri. Because we can just cross the state lines too, if we want. Okay? So this is why we need to really be all in on Amendment 3, in my humble opinion. So, any questions? Yes?
With the exceptions of rape and incest
yes.
or aborting babies, biblically, how can we tell a congregation that this is an okay thing to say, yes, this is good to enshrine in our Constitution it's okay to abort babies conceived in rape and incest?
Okay, so I'm going to take one side of that first, and then feel free, pastors, if anybody else wants to chime in on this. But first of all, we're not putting anything into our Constitution right now. We are ripping out 98% of it. We have abortions for all 9 months for any reason, including rape and incest in there now. And I get it. None of us want rape and incest. None of us. But the reality is, the polling has shown over and over again for 5 years consistently that more than 70% of Missourians want rape and incest clauses. We have hearts and minds to change here. But let me give you what I tell people sometimes. And I actually said this, I know that this is in your area, to Mike Moon, because Mike Moon and I were going back and forth about HJR 73 when he was debating it. And I said, Mike, what's going to change hearts and minds faster? Because we know, let me tell you right now, if Amendment 3 does not pass this year, we will have this despicable Article 1, Section 36 in here for at least a decade. And here's why. We are not, if we lose twice in a row, we're never going to get any money to fight it. And number two, the legislature did everything in their power to pass this last year. There will be no stomach in the legislature until we get a whole new crop of people in. So we're looking at a decade of death and destruction at the minimum if we don't pass this year. So where was I going with that? We were talking about...
One of the things like for the old Amendment 3.
Well, let me finish my story, sorry. So Mike Moon, I said to him, what is going to get us hearts and minds changed faster? 10 years of death and destruction, unlimited abortions, children lopping off body parts, the division in the family, or 10 years, because we've done Amendment 3, where we have women now 10 years later saying, thank God I didn't have my abortion 10 years ago. And children who are now adults saying, thank God 10 years ago I did not lop off my body parts and take those medications. Thank God. What's going to change hearts and minds faster? Do you know what his answer was to me? The day before I was there, a woman came into his office and said, I would not have gotten an abortion if it had been illegal. And I said, Mike, there's your answer. But that's not how you voted. So
We like for our church.
And then you're next, okay?
Boldly against the original Amendment 3.
What?
It's terrible. And so
Yes.
it is just horrible. How can we then speak to this and say it is better in some aspects, but it's still in the realm of rape and incest as a compromise for biblical truth and biblical standard of what God expects. So then how do we encourage our congregation to say, yes, vote on know this part right here is compromised?
Because everything we do is either moving us closer to God or away from God. If you vote no on this amendment, you are affirming abortions for all 9 months for any reason, children being able to go and get abortions without the parents' consent, children being able to lop off body parts without their parents' consent, our legislature being able to do nothing to fix any of this, and for at least a decade. So while I know this is tough from a pastor's standpoint, I get it. I get it. I had a Catholic priest say to me, I knew how to preach on the last one. I told them it's a mortal sin if you vote for this. And I don't know how to tell. She's an old Catholic, aren't you? But I don't know how to preach on this. Pastors, anybody want to help on this? How would you preach on it?
So I oppose the old one. I'm not for the old one if I also said I oppose rape and incest.
But you're affirming it to stay in. And
That's not necessarily true. I'm not affirming the old one to stay in. I think
So you only have two choices. Is that what
right.
you're saying?
Well, you have two choices. It's either yes or no.
Automatically vote for the other.
Right.
But that's a false dichotomy. Like,
No.
you can't
No.
say this or this. Like, you can't say,
If you say no on this one, you're saying yes.
if you say there's evil in this one, and there's evil in this
vote.
one. But they're trying to do us, or in the Missouri Constitution, that there's exceptions for abortions for a population of Missouri. It's okay to murder these people, that's evil. And even if it's rape and incest, that's evil. So you're saying, yeah.
This is the only path to get where you want to go.
But so like,
The only path.
I would love to see another path, but the question is, how do we, with clear conscience and proclaiming the truth, say that evil is not evil when this amendment has a portion that is evil?
Right.
So I think you
The
also.
ones that would go for that are the weak consciences.
What's it again? Can you explain that to me? The only ones that will go for that is the weak conscience.
Yeah, when you have these two before you, and this makes so much sense to get to where you're going to go in the future. Okay, this is not going to get you anywhere except more dead babies.
Right.
So,
Tons of them.
And we also, let's not, wait. So also, let's not forget, the church is not the government and the government is not the church. We are called to be the salt and light, and we live in a broken world with broken people and a broken legislature. There's no doubt about that. So there will never be a perfect bill until Jesus Christ comes back in the second coming. So we have to do what we can do to save as many lives as quickly as possible. Do you want to add your input?
Yeah, I think that the cultural pull that we have to bring
Right.
to cannot be understated.
Mhm.
And I always say that Jesus was a 9-month baby. And if you look back in the early on, when God gave the promise to Abraham that he would be the father of many nations, he was dealing with pagan and polygamous. He understood that he couldn't snap his finger and make the culture be perfect.
Yeah.
And I was just listening to the book of Acts this morning, and there was a warning going out that we can't get away with this, talking about some of the priests, without the people's support. There's something that we can't magically make happen, but we can with the salt and the light.
Mhm.
When we season our food, we put a little bit on until we get it where we want it. I really believe that we do not have two competing bills here. Division would be the worst thing that can happen to this movement right now.
Yep.
It will be the worst. Anybody's ever been to a church split, know that there's nothing more painful. I think that we can find ways to support both. on
Absolutely.
both sides
And we
of the
should.
line.
We should.
I
Yep.
really think that we're on the same team. And we need to really lock that in. We are on the same team. We're unified to get rid of abortion. There's nobody in this group that I know who wants abortion.
Correct.
Nobody will support it. And if you look at Moses, when Moses was given the permission for divorce, he was not supporting divorce.
Mhm.
He was dealing with a culture that was decrepit. And he had to wait until God can pull him all along to make a nation. And people who would ban polygamous,
Yep.
abortions,
Yep.
and everything else. So I'm saying be patient with this and know that we're all
Right.
on the same team.
Right.
Number one,
Right.
we're all going in the same direction. I support what Mike Moon is doing. I talked to him about this a year or so ago.
Right.
I support what Missouri Right to Life is doing. I support anybody who's going to take us in the direction that I know God affirms. And I really want us as a body of people to really look at unity
Right.
first.
And I
Follow
think,
the truth in the direction that God
But this
affirms.
God
Correct.
are rape and incest clauses.
what?
He doesn't. That's like the hard part. It's like the word, and he doesn't affirm that one thing. And so that's where, as a pastor, okay, we're called to be a prophetic voice calling out in the culture, being salt to life. Prophetic voice looks like truth, even when it's difficult. And difficult truth is, even if 98% of voters say we want rape and incest clauses, that's a lie from the devil. Like that is a lie from the devil.
Right. And we need to counter
So
that.
we need to say it's not evil, it's not wicked. That's
Nobody's saying
but to vote yes is to say yes, I want this.
We're not gonna change your mind on that.
Okay.
I think we're looking at the responsibility of a pastor. As a pastor, he gets up there and preaches the truth. We teach verse by verse, chapter by chapter, book by book through the Bible. We preach the truth. So from a pastor's perspective, I cannot get up there and say, it is okay to murder because of rape and incest.
Nobody's saying this.
98% of this bill is absolutely, my wife's a great cook. She makes these brownies that are incredible. Mexican brownies, they're spicy, they're great, they're wonderful. But if you got a little bit of poop in that, dog poop in there, it's horrible. And I can't, as a pastor, get up from the pulpit and say, I am 100% for this bill. I am 100% for everything, except if that little clause was not in there, man, I'd been thrilled. I'd been because the other three, we were probably one of the largest churches that put support in that bill here in Springfield. So my concern is just the wording of that bill, and that's just, as a pastor's responsibility, I can agree at 98% of that. I cannot from a pulpit say, hey, I'm okay with this.
So let me say one more thing. Let me say two things real quick. So we're not starting from ground zero. We're starting from a despicable, demonic thing in our Constitution. If we were starting from ground zero, we would all agree with you 100%, because no one would want to put this into our Constitution. But that's not where we're starting with. We're starting here. And when it comes to Mike Moon's bill that you were talking about, this is exactly right. We need both to get what we want. But the problem is we have to get this one first. And let me explain why. Mike Moon's bill goes into Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution. It does nothing to purge Article 1, Section 36. We need the right to an abortion and the right to mutilate our children out of our Constitution first, and then that has the severability clause to go back, and we will fight, and we will fight, and we will fight to get the rest of it. But we have a lot of hearts and minds to change first.
Quick question, on the personhood bill, you said it's 28 points. You said something about the personhood bill, not, I heard it was.
So 70.
I heard it was in committee right now.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know where the bill is. What I said was 78% of people in Missouri say that were just polled and said that they want rape and incest with any ban. And only 12% said they want a complete ban. You have 12% of Missourians polled right now. Now, I know God can work miracles, but let me ask you this. Have you ever seen a single case in the Bible where Israel turned their back on God and he turned around and fixed it? Not until they repented and came back. So we cannot expect God to just fix this for us. We expect, and I am on my knees begging for mercy for God to help us pass this so that we can continue to get the equal protection and the personhood which we all want in order to end all abortions.
The question on the personhood bill is all I was concerned with.
So personhood.
I heard that it was a committee and that we need to make phone calls to these guys to get it passed in the committee.
Yes.
But you said something about 28%.
But you're just saying that
It won't pass. Yes. Right.
Can I just say,
Yes.
are my
Okay.
These are my pastors. I have the utmost respect for them. And I am thrilled to be under their leadership. But what I would say to you in this situation as a parishioner in your church is, what I would appreciate as a parishioner is for you to not get up there and say, this is 100% fantastic. But look at the options. We have two options. And just tell the truth. Say there is a part of this that's not okay. But if we can't get this out, voting to do something is better than not voting and letting what's
Diane, you're absolutely right.
Tell the truth.
This is the way it is.
Yes.
This is what we look at. You guys, the congregation has the opportunity to
Yes.
decide for
Right.
And
yourself.
do you want, I mean, we're gonna have one or the other. We're either gonna have this or we're gonna be stuck with this.
I don't believe we're arguing over 4%.
You can choose to do both.
0.4% of rape and incest.
The fact is that 50% of Christians don't get out and vote.
Yes.
And not only do, but the ones that do vote, have they been educated enough within their churches to vote biblically? And
Correct.
half the time they don't do that, otherwise we wouldn't
Correct.
have the school board that we have in Springfield.
Right.
We got more churches in this county that you can shake a stick at.
Right.
And the biggest meth problem and domestic violence. This is just one picture, and we're arguing about.
Right. Yeah, 1 second. And the reality is that people in pews and people in churches voted yes on 3 last time. And we need to understand. Sorry.
That's what
Oh, sorry.
That's what I was going to say. One, thank you for describing in detail what our current condition is in the state of Missouri.
Thank you.
And until we all can reject that and stop trying to say that a higher ground when we are sinking as a state.
That's right.
When we can get to that higher ground in a two-phase, I am pro-life 100%. If this can pass and we can pull it out from there like that, to not push to pass that is to not say I'm for any rape and incest. It would in essence say I'm for all of that. If you don't vote, you're for that because that's what's going
Right.
on. If you vote against it because of the 0.4, then you're really saying yes to the all that other. So if we have a chance to correct the atrocity,
Yep.
and our church spoke strong on the previous
Right.
one, to say no on that.
Right.
And I hope we'll do the same to say yes on this. It is confusing how much pendulum shift can
Yep.
we do in the state. We can put it in the Constitution, we can take it out of the Constitution.
Right.
Put it, no, I don't like that.
Right.
I would like us to just move completely
Right.
to ban.
Right.
And I want to say thank you for making it clear on
So-
not what's
thank you.
not, but what is.
Thank you. Now, let me tell you one more thing, too, before we end, because this is just as critical, but I'm only going to give you a 2-sentence, probably, thing on this. There is another amendment, Amendment 4. Amendment 4 is the initiative petition reform, which will say that instead of being 50% plus 1 across the state that got this despicable thing into our Constitution, that we will be voting to say we want 50% plus 1 in each of the 8 congressional districts. That will do 2 things. It will spread out. 8 counties voted yes on 3 last time. 114 counties is what we have in this state. We need to spread it out and let the rural vote have more influence on the morals of our state. That's one thing. So Amendment 4, if we pass Amendment 3, but we do not pass Amendment 4, we will be back in 2 years with another horrific amendment just as bad as this one in our Constitution, because the left can buy our Constitution. And that's what's happening. We need to vote, if you hear nothing else, yes on 3, yes on 4. 4 will probably be in August. 3 will probably be in November, but the governor is the only one who has the right to change that and put him on one of those 2 elections. But right now, that's the thinking. Go ahead.
I have what I think is an important question. Is anything, and I'm for moving ahead, not perfectly, but
Right.
progress. Is there anything that addresses, for might say in the classroom or what books would be in libraries?
No, so those are separate issues, and those are not in this constitutional amendment. So what they did was they stuck to the issues that has got us where we were going, but there was a bill that said that all pornographic material had to come out of the schools, and it passed in Missouri. The problem is they said it had to be graphically pornographic. So now we have word pornography that is still allowed in our schools, so they need to keep working on that. So that issue is not in this, though.
Is the separability clause, does it allow things, definitional changes to be made? So like, the definitions here are good definitions, so like
Right.
fatal fetal anomaly,
Right.
medical emergency.
Right.
Does the separability then allow those things to shift if deemed unconstitutional?
No. The only thing that can be, you would have to sue the state of Missouri in order to get something saying that it's not constitutional. A definition put in the Constitution.
The definition would be tied to the new amendment 3. So the definition
Yes.
would say you can't change fetal anomaly to not be fatal.
Right, that is the definition. So this is why this is so important. The definitions are so well written to make this so tiny. It is a few abortions, we know that. But we also know, here's the other thing. I had somebody ask me, so why wouldn't everybody just cry rape then? And I said, why would they need to? Right now, you don't have to be a woman who falsely accuses a man of rape and goes through that kind of scrutiny when I can just get online and get my drugs sent right to my house in the privacy of my home. So rape and incest should not change under this. What really needs to be changed is the chemical abortion industry, and we have to have our legislators in order to do that. And if you want to talk about something from the pulpit, that is it. Chemical abortions make up 70% of the abortions in the state of Missouri. We have to control that. Go ahead.
Hey, just a couple of things. I think that most of our parishioners don't understand what we're even debating here.
Correct.
When I ran for office a few years ago, I wasn't even aware. I thought, well, I'm a Christian, we're against abortion.
Right.
I didn't know there was a difference between, pro-life abolitionists and pro-life,
Right.
Practitioners or whatever. And we need all of them. I love what you said there. God, we need everyone to be on board with it. And here's the analogy. I'm a simple man. This is my analogy. We're all on the same team. We're getting our butts kicked right now.
Right.
And we got basically about 40 seconds to score. The ball's being kicked off to us. And we're going to be kicked deep into our territory. We got to go 80 yards down the field. I would rather start on the 2-yard line to try to get my 4 chances to push it in for a
Yep.
touchdown than because of a technicality, just stay back on the 20-yard line. I think that's where we're at with it. I don't think it's perfect either. I have people tell me I'm not really pro-life, and I don't care if I think we lost it when we went with the pro-life versus pro-choice vernacular anyway. Either you are for killing babies or you're not for it.
Right.
So it's, I don't want to haggle over pro-life, pro-choice. I have people attack me like, you're not really truly pro-life if you're not an abolitionist then, and how can I support you? You think what you want to. I want the ball on the 2-yard line, and I want us all together trying to push it in, because it's no guarantee that we're going to win. There are too many babies being killed, and this stuff isn't just, I pastor in the inner city of St. Louis. This isn't just, a philosophy for
Right.
me. How many of us really do know people that have gone to have abortions, these young kids, and then they come back later and say, a year later, that was the worst thing I ever did. We sit here arguing over semantics. We have 4 downs from the 2-yard line to push it in if this thing passes, and that's where I see it.
Yeah. Thank you.
When we started the pregnancy center 30 years ago in this town, one of our biggest concerns was the fact that many of the people getting abortions was from the youth groups in our churches. It wasn't even being taught then, and it was easy for them to do that. It's a whole different world now. We're talking about what we're hearing from the hearts and minds of people,
Right.
and yes, we systematically teach the Bible through this, but we have to practically present the gospel.
Right.
Challenging Christians to get out of the community and make an impact. That's what we're failing.
I want to say this one other thing too. One of the reasons why I'm using my voice here in Springfield, because we have to overwhelmingly get behind this here in Springfield and literally white suburban Missouri.
Yes.
Because in Kansas City, I St. Louis, they are voting to kill their own babies.
Yes.
And we have to cover them. We have to cover them. Our voices matter. We got to speak up, and we got to speak loudly. It's got to be a fact.
Yes. If you look, I think somebody passed out the Amendment 4 stuff. If you look on the back, you can see the two maps, and the abortion map is one of them. It literally passed in 3 areas of the state. We have to overwhelmingly pass this one here and in all the rural areas, and then my job is to try to get the votes in St. Louis and St. Charles counties, because it's going to take the entire state to get this passed. And we need the pulpits this year. We need them to get up and talk about it. Go ahead.
In 73, when abortion first got, Roe versus Wade got, there was a book that came out by a Dallas Theological Seminary professor that didn't realize the impact that abortion would have. The church has always been behind the issues, and so now we have to gain ground.
Right.
We knew that this would happen with abortion, then the LGBT mafia, alphabet mafia came after us, and now we're dealing with grandchildren that are dealing with sex change because they don't even know that's even
Right.
simple.
Yep.
You know what your boy or girl, okay? We're dealing with issues here
Right.
that we really have to get above and get ahead of.
Yeah. So in the back of the room, just so you know, there's a sheet here that basically goes over a lot of what I did in my presentation. There's another sheet that says, literally, there's only one option in November, yes or no. So, and this breaks it out of what you're voting for, either yes or no. And then there's also, if everyone would just take one of these and have it in their back pocket, it just is a real quick summary of what this is going to do for us. And it's just a game changer. Like, I just talked to people. I stayed at a hotel last night, and I asked the lady, so have you heard of Amendment 3? And you'll know right away. Most people haven't. I called a pastor in St. Louis City. I called a pastor who helped us with the last amendment. And I said, hey, do you remember me, the one that got you those signs for your church? And he's like, oh, yeah. And I said, have you heard about the new Amendment 3? Never heard of it. Never heard of it. We have to make sure that all of the other pastors and stuff in the area at least hear about it, and get Janine to come and do some presentations, because people are confused right now. 30% of people who voted no last time think they should vote no again, and 30% of people who voted yes last time think they should vote yes again. There is a lot of confusion. So we need people to talk about it. So just ask people. You'll know right away. If they've ever heard of it, they'll have a strong opinion one way or the other. Or if they've never heard of it, just ask them. Did you want rape and incest, or do you want abortions for all 9 months? And do you want children going off and getting abortions and that without it? Oh, let me tell you. She said, sure, I'll take information about it, the lady at the hotel this morning. So just anybody you can talk to. People have not heard about it. Anything else? Thank you so much for having me come.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks.